Okay, well, here we are in week 6 of crime scenes to conviction, critical skills, and got about 4 or 5 more weeks to go, and the quarter will be over and completed, and we're coming up on the time for our projects. The initial draft will be due in week 8, and then the final draft will be due in week 10. So we're coming up on that. You just finished this past week your field notes, and I will be grading those this week, and by the end of the week or Sunday at the latest, you should have those back and getting ready for the next week. So let's see what we got here for right now. This week, week 6. Okay. Week 6. Again, my usual reminder of people who need to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. And then reminding you guys, well, we're past this actually, so you don't have this issue anymore in this class. And I'm reminding you now that we have 2 more lectures to go, and that'll be in week 8 and in week 10. So let's look at what our announcement for the week says. Police interrogation. Police interrogation, one most important methods of communication, and we're going to go over a bit about that. Your assignment for the week is to read Chapter 9 of Written and Interpersonal Communication and Report in Writing, Section 4, Parts C and D. And then also to go over the section on Miranda rights, which we will, and we're going to look at a video, Burglary at the Warehouse. This is always a very interesting one that I like to go over with my students, and it shows you how interrogations can operate. And then I want to remind you that your discussion posts were due day before yesterday, your initial posts. Where were you last night at 6? It's all about interrogation, and it's about gathering information. And so your initial post was due Tuesday, and then your reply post will be due on Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then finally, complete the written assignment, CJ project, make revisions to your field notes, also finish the writing skills. Now, you're going to see that the written assignment, make revisions to your field notes, is not necessarily a graded assignment, but you should be taking a look at that and making sure. But you will be doing the writing skills quiz. And remind you that adversity is a springboard to success is my motto, and we want to start strong and finish strong. So let's take a look at our course calendar real quick. Alrighty. Course tools. And let's go down a little further. Okay. So here we are right here, and these are the assignments for the week. And then you'll see that the skills quiz is the actually only written assignments you have this week are your discussion post and your quiz. As I said, this is a reminder to make revisions. It's not a written assignment. You won't see it under assignments when we go over it in a few minutes. It's just a reminder and a heads up for you, because you'll get it back in plenty of time to be able to make the revisions that you need. So without that, let's go into Chapter 6, Week 6, Again, let's quickly see the assignments, and you'll see what I was talking about. All you'll see is the discussion and the quiz. That is it. Nothing else after that for actually assignments that are graded. So it's a pretty light week for you, but some students get tricked because of the fact that they say, oh, I don't have much to do this week. Well, as soon as you get your grade back, you want to make sure that you get ready, because I do want to share something with you. Let me jump ahead for right now. We're going to come back to the section 6, but I want to jump ahead to chapter 7. So once you get your comments back that I send you on your field report, tell you what you need to do, the following week, week 7, this is what you're going to have. Just a discussion. Just your discussion. That's it. So you want to make sure that you get that done. So you'll see. But when you go to the students always say this is the favorite part of the class because it's so light, but it's a false sense of security coming along because of the assignments. But I warn you to begin work on your police report. That's what we want you to be able to do next week. And then we give you some CJ writing practice that you do. But now, here's what I want to point out to you. And this is where a lot of students mess up. Where it says, begin work on your police report. It says, take time this week. Now, this is for next week. Now, this is not due this week. The front sheet, first section report, which is based on your field notes, which you'll have back. And it tells you that you prepared those in week 5, which you did, and I will be grading. Click on the link below and save it to your hard drive. Begin filling in the first section now, but don't turn it in until week 8. So you're really going to have 2 weeks that you don't really have to do a written assignment outside of discussion post and the quiz that you have. So you'll see what I'm talking about here. Now, I do want to take a lot of people mess up, and this is very important that people get this. They say to me, oh, I didn't know that there was a template that we use for our week 8 assignment. And there is. You have to click on here. This is it right here. This is it. It says the video emphasized the importance of report writing. They took that video out because of the fact that that video wasn't so good. So, but I have provided you an article early on in the quarter about police report writing. But anyway, this is the template that you're going to be using. So you click on this link, and then you're going to open up the Word document. And then you're going to start to, fill in information and stuff like that. Now, some of this information you won't find. Just fill in information, fictitious information. The student always asks me every time, and I guarantee you, some are going to ask me that didn't see this, that when we get to the report, why do we don't have information like offense number and so forth and so on? No, you can make that up, department and all of that stuff. Time and date of arrival, you might have that kind of stuff, but everything that you take out of your field notes that you can. Now, then you're going to begin to get your report ready, your victim information and so forth. All of that stuff is for your front sheet, okay? You're going to fill in the answers to these things. Now, what I want to tell you is that if you discover in your report that, and there is victim, there is a victim. If there's more than one victim, then you'll have victim number 1 and victim number 2. But if there is no suspect, and I'm not going to talk to you about whether or not there is an answer already given, but if there's no suspect at the time you write this report, you can eliminate this section here. You don't even have to have it in there. Just eliminate it. Suspect 1 and 2. Then you do your witnesses. If there's witness 1, witness 2, fill in all the information. If there's witness 3, if there's no witness 3, eliminate it. And then if there's only one witness, eliminate number 2. So the basic thing is there's no information. For the offense charges, fill in some information that you have here. Now, the evidence information, type of evidence collected. Type of evidence collected. And I'll be talking about this in week 8 as well. The type of evidence that's collected will be the things that you discover from the scene and so forth and so on. Then the chain of custody, which you will be graded on to see if you follow it right. The importance of the chain of custody is to protect the integrity of the evidence that's discovered from the investigation. So let's say, for example, if you found, okay, I got my glasses. Let's say you found a pair of glasses. Then you would pick up those glasses. Of course, you would have gloves or something on, and you'd put them in a bag, and then you'd label that bag exhibit number, so and so, so and so. Say where you got it, the northeast corner of the building or of the property or something like that. Those kinds of things. So you got to be particular about how you do it. Don't just say, I got a camera here, I got some shoes and so forth. I want more particulars. And what you're going to do is you're going to explain that after you've done that process of gathering the information, what did you do with it next? Did you turn it in to the next party? Did you take it into the station? You don't want to hold on to it because the integrity of the evidence is going to be challenged in court, because one of the questions that's raised in court is the chain of custody to make sure that this is actually the item that was recovered at the scene that actually shows up in court. And if not, then they say it's a sample. I remember using an example in the O.J. Simpson case that Detective Van Adder, I think it was, he recovered some shoes, tennis shoes, and he took those tennis shoes that when he recovered them, put them in his trunk, and he testified on the stand. They asked him about them. What did you do with the shoes when you got them? He said, I put them in my trunk. He says, so what did you do next? He says, well, I turned them in at the station. Says, well, did you turn them in the station that same day, or what time did you do it? No, it was in my trunk a few days, and then I turned it in. That was messed up, because now the integrity of the item is in question. Who knows who could have tampered with what and did what during that period of time. So that's what you're trying to do, and you want to put this in your report. Very, very, very important. And then we get to the items taken and so forth and so on, which is not as important because you've already covered that. But then you get to the meat, and I'm not going to go over that right now, but the narrative section and the who, what, when, where, how, why, if possible. And then there's a conclusion and recommendation. What I was going to say to you is, if there is no suspect, you should, in your conclusion or recommendation or somewhere at the end of your narrative, state there is no suspect at this time and that the investigation is continuing. So if you have not named a suspect, so you don't have to say N.A., N.A., N.A. And that's something I try to remind students to do. Very important. And those are just some of the things that I want to tell you. And that goes back to the stuff we have that's for next week. So now you know the template. And that's the same one you're going to use for week 8 and for week 10. Okay. So I hate that bell. So now let's get back to number 6. Any questions, Bob, about the template and recognizing the fact that, oh, I'm going to be using that template, and like I said again, you got some time, but it's always good. And I've kind of tipped you off, and I've done this way this quarter for the first time because I noticed that students were okay. All right. So seeing that will help you a whole lot. So I think you said no showing. Oh, okay, showing helped you a lot. So then that helps you to understand. Is that what you said? Oh, okay, that's what I thought you said. Okay. All right. So anyway, that's something that will help you next week. So now let's get back into the lesson content. And we're going to talk about the Miranda techniques that are used during the interrogation process, and talk about some successful methods for interrogation of a suspect and so forth. So some of that grammar stuff, we're always covering that, you know. So again, your assignments for the week, I gave you the reading. We're going to talk about your Miranda rights in just a few minutes. Then we're going to look at this video, Burglary at the Warehouse. Okay, and then remind you have the writing skills quiz to do. So again, like I said, week 6 and week 7 on the written assignment side are very light, but don't get caught into a sense of false security. All right, so Miranda. Everybody knows the Miranda decision. If you've watched any kind of TV movies, you can almost say it verbatim. But a little history for you that you won't learn from a lot of professors because they don't have the experience that I have. And here's what it is. The interrogation techniques that were used prior to the Miranda case in 1966, interrogation and confession techniques. If you ever look at the full case, and I encourage you to look at it, you'll see some footnotes at the bottom of a mention of the techniques designed by Inbow and Reed. Inbow and Reed. Reed is a guy who did a number of books on interrogation and confessions, but he did this one particular book jointly with Professor Fred Inbow. Professor Inbow was my criminal law professor in 1975, and he has since passed away. But Professor Inbow personally felt that he was maligned by the court in 1966 in the decision because of the techniques that were used. They thought that they were onerous and not fair. So what evolved were the written Miranda warnings. He, as I said, took it personally, and what he did every year that I know of till he passed away or retired from teaching, he submitted an amicus brief to the U.S. Supreme Court whenever an issue came up before the Supreme Court about the Miranda case. And it was his desire and dream to see the Miranda versus Arizona case completely overturned, not just modified, but overturned, to return back to those days from before. And it never happened. When he passed away, it hadn't happened. But I learned a whole lot from having him as a professor talking about interrogation and techniques. I actually had his book in my library for many years. Then I moved a couple times, and then I lost some boxes of books in a flood, and that was probably one of them because I never saw it anymore after that. But at any rate, Inbow, I-N-B-A-U, is his name. And I have some information that I will probably send to you guys later on about Professor Enbow. But he was committed. He was committed. We used to call him Freddie the Cop. And the reason why we did is because he was always pro-prosecution. He was the teacher and lecturer of one of our governors who was a U.S. attorney, several of them, U.S. attorneys, Governor not Dan Walker, but Governor James Thompson, and who was also a U.S. prosecutor for the Northern District of Illinois. And then Dan Webb was another. Judge James Zagel, who was the judge in the case that involved our former governor, who was prosecuted and went to jail. And so he did a whole lot. He did a whole lot. But I learned a whole lot as well about interrogations. And so going along with all of that, it comes to the point that if the interrogator goes too far in terms of their questioning, a motion to suppress can be filed by the defense attorney to suppress the statements that were obtained without giving them Miranda warnings. Now, it says here that interrogations are frequently used as a technique to obtain confessions about an offense. Interrogations differ from an interview. Well, they're basically the same, except that the questioning someone about an event in itself is more like gathering information, just about an event. But when you get to the point about the person is in custody, when someone is in custody. Now, how do you know that you should read the Miranda warnings? At what point, okay, it says in custody, but at what point is it that you as a police officer or a person who would be questioning a suspect should, or an individual would be required to give Miranda warnings? There's one key thing that takes place, and I've talked about this in my Introduction to Criminal Law class. There's one thing that takes place. Do you know what that one thing is? Okay, in custody before any questioning or interrogation. Okay, what's the definition of in custody? There we go. Bam. That's it. Not free to leave. That is it in a nutshell. So if a person, and we used to always tell the defense attorneys, people, that if you are asked questions and you said, look, I don't want to answer any questions, am I free to go? And the officer says no. At that point in time, when it's established or made clear to you that you can't go, maybe placed in handcuffs or either maybe even in the squad car in a situation, but you are not free to leave. At that point, it behooves the officer or a person to give the Miranda warnings as soon as possible, because anything that's said after that is considered as custodial, and without the Miranda warnings is subject to a motion to suppress. And so the individual must be advised of these rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Then it tells you have a right to an attorney and have an attorney present before and during questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed free of charge to represent you before and during the question if you desire. Now, at any time during that interrogation, the suspect, as it says, can admit guilt, invoke their Miranda rights, or refuse to make any further statements. So let's say, for example, if you're questioning an individual and that individual says, I don't want to talk to you anymore. According to the Miranda rights, should you continue with the questioning at that time? No, because of what it says. And if a person is silent and refuses to answer your question without saying anything, that is an indication. Now that's assuming that we've gotten to the point that there's no hearing problem, there's no communication barrier. They understand well what you're saying. They're not saying anything. You can't, get up in their face and threaten them and all those kind of things. Those are no-nos. And now what's happening more and more and more to protect both parties, law enforcement as well as the party who is in custody, is videotaping. And those tapes really will provide a lot of information. During the course of my law practice, and I was a defense attorney, we would go on the statements of the witnesses themselves, the defendant, and we would oftentimes be our word against the police. Well, we were shooting with a short stick, and so the police would almost all the time win, unless and until it came out that there were some techniques that were used. For example, there was a police commander by the name of John Burge, Jonburge is his name, and it was discovered that this happened in the late 80s, early 90s, that this police chief at this location, not the Chicago, he wasn't over the whole police department, but he was over what we call Area 2. And he would engage or have his people engaged in questioning, and they would torture suspects. I mean, I'm serious. I'm talking about cattle prods. They would beat them with phone books. They would stick them. It was, you name it. They did some of everything that they possibly could, and confessions came out. Well, many of those confessions were overturned after it was discovered that there was a pattern and it was happening a whole lot. And so these people were allegedly given their Miranda warnings, but then the crap was beat out of them, or they were put in a coercive situation where they actually gave statements. Well, obviously, those statements are not going to fly. And so anyway, it is very important because it goes to the right to the Fifth Amendment that says you remain silent. You don't have to testify against yourself and those kinds of things. Well, by making statements and warn not to, then you waive those rights. But but that to be freely and voluntarily. And so, as I said, back in the old days, it was a debate that happened a lot of times. But now, as I said, there are more and more videos. Now, here's something that you should know, is that there is a form of giving the Miranda rights by off the top of your head. And you can give those warnings, you have a right to remain silent, anything you say can be used against you, and so forth, so on. The key thing, though, is that if you mess up on any of them, you might have a problem. And so as a result of that, there's the law has said, well, and it's really not really important anymore because of the way officers are trained and are required to use the procedures that almost every department that I know of, including the one that I was with in 89 to 93, we had pre-printed cards, and we would read the pre-printed card to the individual, and it was in the language that the person added. The person was in Spanish, then someone would read it in Spanish to them and make sure that they understood it at the end. The point of the matter is that in those instances, we protected ourselves because one of the things that defense attorneys were good for doing, and I said I was one. I'm one of those people who was a police officer, a prosecutor for a little while, but a defense attorney most of the time. And so when representing my client, I would often ask the officer about, you know, did you Mirandize the individual? And then I would ask them, what method did you use? And they said, well, I did it from memory. If they said they did it from memory, I'm going to have some fun with them. And the reason why I say that is because, to be honest with you, when you're on the stand, I don't care how seasoned you are, you already know that as soon as you're turned over to the other side, that is the defense, that you're the prosecution's witness, and you're law enforcement, that we're going to have something up our sleeves to try to impeach you, that is, to catch you in presenting what we now here use the term alternative facts, or something that's not true or not accurate. And so as a result, we do that same thing with the Miranda warning. So the officers are trained to say, no, here's our card, and then they would read it in front of the courtroom there. And who would have them read it usually is the prosecution, because the prosecution would have it laid out. Well, that would take out the stain of defense attorney. And, you know, so anyway, the bottom line is that the Miranda warnings are so foundationally and so very, very, very important, which is why when I answered or looked at some of your discussion posts this past week, and, you know, where were you last night at 6, I threw in a little mention to make sure that, yes, you had to know a lot about the individual, you had to know about the case, you had to do your homework and stuff like that. You have to use the techniques, some of the techniques and things that we've talked about in previous weeks about how to get information from an individual, okay? The bottom line is that you want to make sure that you have satisfied that Miranda requirement, because you can have all that information, and then you could get a person could confess to something, and you won't be able to use it. There are some issues that have taken place regarding individuals who were, okay, they were taken into custody. Now, and you took them to the station, and on the way to the station, and then they started talking and making statements and so forth and so on. And when they make those statements, as soon as they make those statements, then you should then stop and give them the Miranda warnings from that particular point. Now, the question is, could you use the information that they voluntarily gave before that? Could you? Could you? What do you think? Think you could use it? Okay. If they voluntarily gave it, you were riding in the car, you can use that information. And then the Miranda warnings, anything they say afterwards, you can use that bit of information they gave before, but you'd have to paint the scenario very clearly as to how you obtained that information they voluntarily gave it. Because what do you think is going to happen when that individual goes and talks to their attorney? Do you think that they're going to say, no, they didn't, they tricked me into saying this, or I didn't know what I was talking about, or something like that? They're going to go into the mode of protecting themselves. Would you agree? Would you agree? Yeah, 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 what they will probably do is say they asked about the information, which meant they proceeded with questioning, even though it wouldn't be true. Now, if you have cams in the cars like they do now, then that's different. But back in the day, we didn't have any of that stuff. You know, when I started out, we didn't have cell phones or any of that kind of stuff, cameras and all of that. You know, none of that existed. Definitely not dash or body cams and those kind of things. But my point being is that from a strategic standpoint, if you're taking a person, when a person is under arrest, and the point that I wanted to establish early on is that a person is deemed under arrest, what you said, Bob, is when they're not free to go. Then at that point, as a practice, we recommend, and we've been told this, give your warnings at that particular point. Because the fact that if you're riding in the car and then the person says something afterwards, well, you actually gave them the warnings beforehand and that kind of thing. So the key is when they're in custody to give it at the beginning so that you won't have to, I mean, you can still go through that, but again, I repeat, you got to remember when I start talking, sometimes I'm thinking about the way it was before cameras, but now with the cameras will cooperate and show the time and all of those kind of things, and it gives a timeline. So it's a benefit to both parties. If you go to the Fine Law website, which features the complete case, you'll see what I was talking about, and look at the footnotes and things in there. So it's very, 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 very important and very much required. I do remember an instance where the rights and warnings were given to a person, and they were given so fast. That was what the person said. They said they didn't hear everything. They didn't get everything. And a lot of times what they would say is that the part about having the right to talk to an attorney or an attorney present before and during questioning, and they missed that point. Well, one of the reasons they would miss is because they were already nervous about the situation that they were in. But the bottom line, again, in protecting yourself, if you read that card, and the card's already laid out and covers every one of the points, and then allows you at the end to ask that person, do you understand your rights or something similar to that? There's a card, I don't have it anymore. I used to have one that actually had it in there, and if you look at it, you'll know what I'm talking about. So then after that, if a suspect admits guilt, confesses anything, then you can question him. And then, now, let me ask this question of you. If a person is given their Miranda warning, and then they they do start talking, and then they stop after that, can they change their mind and start again? Can they start again? What do you think? I'm shaking my head up and down. Wise. Absolutely. Officers have gotten tricked like that. And as a result of that, there's been full statements even that they had gathered before properly that were tossed out because the officer messed up. The Miranda warnings are what we call the dot every I and cross every T rule in interrogation and confession. That's what we call it. So that, there's no room for error on your side and leaving stuff out. And so constitutional rights are used as a way of escaping a lot of times. And like I said again, I have seen cases where it didn't matter that the person committed the offense. is that the police got tricked in a situation similar to that. I know of one particular case for sure that that I had where a young man stopped the questioning, and then later on, you know, they held him, they kept him there, and then he called them in. He says, you know what, you're not going to let me go until I tell you. So here's so and so, so and so. That was thrown out. That was thrown out. That was thrown out. Because at that particular point, then that officer should say, we're not going to ask you, we're not going to hear anything you're saying now. Your attorney gets here, and then you want to call for your attorney, and they call. If they don't call for the attorney, you still don't go back and ask them, you still want your attorney. That's a no-no as well. The presumption is that that person is in custody and is deprived of their freedom. Now, unless you say, okay, you can go in that kind of situation, that's different. And then they can go. But the point of the matter is that you can't play games with that kind of thing. So you kind of get the idea that one of the pivotal issues in interrogation is to make sure that you have the Miranda warnings given so as to protect yourself as well as that individual. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. So now let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this thing here. Sometimes it takes a little while to get this up. Let's see. Now this is a scenario where a burglary at a warehouse takes place. Have you had a chance to look at this? Most students haven't before they come here. Did you have a chance to look at this yet? The video at the warehouse, Bob? DVX format. Okay, I don't know what that means, but so the answer is no. You couldn't see it then, right? Or you could see it, but some formats you can't get it. Oh, at work you could. Okay. Did you see it at work? Oh, okay. All right. So this is going to be kind of like a little review for you because I'm going to talk to you about some things involving here. So let's go through this. Okay. Let's see. Should open. Okay, it's taking a few minutes to open it up and download. Oh, okay. Oops, I got to reconnect to this to make sure I can get it. Okay, it's taking a few more minutes. Just about there. 1 second left. Okay, here it comes. Okay, it's not going to work with this one. Okay, let's do this. This is what I'm going to do. I've had to do this before, so let's do it this way. Okay, get rid of that Adobe Reader. Okay, let's go into this mode. Hang on there a minute. Okay, I got to go down my little, Should be down here at the bottom. Okay, there it is. Okay, let's log in. Okay, let's do it this way. Okay, now let's go to, it's not going to work here. I don't know why it's not working there. Supposed to. I don't know why it does that. Okay, it's giving me a little hard time here. Let's use this. Okay, let's try using the other part here. I'll just use another one. Come on. Hopefully I lose you. No, you're there. Okay, come on. It's taking a little while to load. Okay, let me log in now and see. This will let me log back in. Okay, here we go. Okay, now let's log into the classroom. And let's go down to module number 6. Okay, let's go to lesson content. Hang in there. Okay, now. Interviewing the suspect. Okay, let's hit it now. I already did this. I don't know what it's doing here. Oh, I know why. Here we go. Okay, now I'm going to go okay, now we got it. Okay, it should show up. It takes a little while. It is so slow. I don't know why it just does that. It's one of these days they're going to change that so that it comes up faster. I use Firefox. There it goes.
Hello, this is Officer Randall with the Bloomingdale Police Department. Is this Chris Patrick?
And depending on your answer, you go through it. I'm going to say yes.
Yes. Your roommate, Keith Rennie, was arrested last night for burglarizing a building. We would like for you to come down to the police station because there are some things we want to talk to you about.
And then here's your choice. You say, okay, I'll be there in an hour. Maybe I should have a lawyer with me. It depends on which one you select, and you're going to see at the end the results. So I'm going to go with the ones that I like to select. Some of them I'm going to do purposely to trick you, but watch this. Okay, he's going to cooperate at first.
Okay, I can be there in an hour.
Thank you for coming in, Chris. As I said on the phone, your roommate, Keith, was arrested last night for burglary. Were you with Keith last night?
We went bowling after dinner, and then we walked back to our apartment.
Were you drinking last night?
And he could say, not really, just a beer or two while bowling, or yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each. He could say, yeah, probably 5, or either not really. Now, if you start to use not really, then you're getting kind of evasive. Would you agree? Would you agree? That is getting kind of evasive if you use that first choice. Yep. So let's just go with...
Yeah, probably 5 or 6 beers each.
Keith told us you had a lot to drink last night. What did you and Keith do after you got back home?
We talked for a while and watched TV. Later, I went to bed.
What did you talk about?
We talked about that warehouse next door to our apartment building. We were curious about what was in there since we've never seen anyone going in or out.
Did you talk about how a person might get into the warehouse?
Keith mentioned an air duct on the side of the building.
Do you know where Keith was arrested?
Now, your thoughts here, as you notice what they're saying, your thoughts, is you're realizing that he's starting to talk about a little more details, and the question is, was he really that drunk? It should come into your mind. Was he really that drunk? 5 or 6 beers. He's kind of opening himself up because he's given a lot of information. If he said, like, I don't remember any of that stuff because I was so drunk, then, but he's starting to elaborate on that. And so the bottom line is that now he's now talking to him. So he says, do you know where Keith was arrested? He'll say, probably at that warehouse next door to our building. I don't know. If you were Keith at this point, which answer would you give? I know which one I would. The first one or the second one? Yeah. So let's do that.
I don't know.
He was arrested at the warehouse on Portland Avenue next to where you live. Were you with him?
No, I went to bed about 10:30.
Is there anyone that can verify that?
Yes, Keith was home when I went to bed.
Anyone else?
Now, you have to make sure you compare it with the thoughts here that you have in your mind, because you already know where Keith is right now. So, anyone else? And it's kind of like a rock and a hard place at this point. The way he's tailoring the questions, if you really follow it. So, which would be anyone else? Which would be the one that you think he would show less of a defense? The first one or the second one? That he's not as defensive. Yeah. So he's no, because if you start saying, well, usually a person wants a lawyer when they realize, yeah, there we go. So now.
No.
You're not under arrest, Chris.
So.
Just a couple more questions and then we will be done. Do you or Keith go to school?
Keith doesn't, but I go to Dale Community College.
We found a sweatshirt on the floor of the warehouse that says Dale Community College. Do you have a sweatshirt like that?
And would it be best for him to say, I don't know what color was the sweatshirt? No, I'm going to answer that for you, because then he's starting to be a wise guy. Now, he's already got himself in deep water. Now remember this. Should he be Mirandized at this point? Yes or no? No. Okay, good.
Yes, a great one.
So you have no alibi for the time. You confess that you discussed breaking into the warehouse. Your clothing was found inside the warehouse, but you claim you were at home sleeping. Doesn't that sound suspicious to you?
Even if it sounds suspicious, I wasn't there and I didn't do anything wrong. Probably more than likely, you're going to get the first response because he realized, uh-oh, this whole thing is turning from an interview to an interrogation.
Here's the situation. This morning, Keith told us that you were there with him in the warehouse last night, but then you left before the police officers arrived.
And either Keith is lying or the cop is lying. Once again, I talked with Keith about the warehouse, but did not go in with him. At this point, which would be the best for him to do? Yeah, but of these two, say nothing, or I talked with Keith about the warehouse, but I didn't go in with him. Okay, here's the problem with that. Remember, you got a t-shirt, a sweatshirt already, and who admits that they have a sweatshirt like that? He does, right? Yeah, that's right. So what would be, at this point, your best cause of action? Do say nothing. Yeah, that would be it. Start getting silent because it's coming to you that, man, I've come down here, so now it gets to he's to the point now.
Whether or not you were actually in the warehouse, you were part of the plan. That means you confessed to conspiracy to commit a felony. I'm willing to believe that you weren't in the warehouse, so if you agree to sign a confession that you helped plan the break-in, I'll make sure you just get probation and not a single night in jail. That's the best I can offer you. Otherwise, we charge you with burglary based on your lies and the evidence.
Okay, so at this particular point, now I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that he waited, the officer waited a little longer than he should have with him? Because at the point where, okay, he's still free to go, so I guess he's not in the confession mode or in the interrogation mode, but in the interviewing mode. But it's a dangerous area that this officer has put himself in when he makes these statements like he did here. You know, how did this happen? If I go to jail, I'll lose my job and probably the car. That's the thoughts. But then I'll confess to planning, but I never went near the warehouse. Forget it, I didn't do anything wrong. So he would probably go with, forget it, I didn't do anything wrong. All right, so now, if he goes with this one, then at that point, then you're probably going to switch and Mirandize him. Would you agree? Yeah, but let's go with this one.
Forget it. I didn't do anything wrong.
Now, this is what it tells you. It says, good job under pressure. Now it's time to try the other side. You be the investigator interviewing Chris Patrick. Maybe Chris is guilty or not. It's your job to get Chris to cooperate and tell the truth. Once Chris contacts a lawyer, of course, the interview is over. Along the way, you will choose which question you ask, but one word of advice, it's just that, so don't get dramatic with it. So you're at a point now where things are shifting. So let's go here. Okay. So now, you're going to go to Chris. Okay. You know, what you've learned already is what you got so far earlier on your questioning of Keith. Thanks for coming here today. So, Chris, do you know why I asked you to come down here? Thanks for coming down here today. Your roommate, Keith, was arrested last night, and I'd like to ask you some questions. How long have you and Keith? So you want to start off with something very light. So do you know why I asked you to come down here? You don't want to do that because then you're going to open up him to conversation, so you're going to thank him.
Thanks for coming down here today. Your roommate Keith was arrested last night, and I'd like to ask you some questions. How long have you and Keith been roommates?
We've shared an apartment for about 2 years.
Now, look at what it says. Start easy. Remember what I said earlier? Start easy. Make someone guess at answers is counterproductive, and it gives the suspect control over the conversation. So you're heading down a pretty good path, but that other answer would have taken you away. So now you want to go, I want to figure out what Keith was doing last night. Were you with him at all? We would like to figure out what Keith was doing last night. Were you with him at all yesterday? So which one would you ask him? There we go.
I want to figure out what Keith was doing last night. Were you with him at all yesterday?
Well, we work at the same place, and after work, we got dinner at Marion's barbecue and then went bowling.
Okay. So, okay. You remind the suspect that you represent the police department, and this is more intimidating than having a more personal conversation. So you're getting them ready. So it's not like a general conversation. Continuing. So now continuing. So now the question is, so now while you're bowling, you guys probably had a few beers and had few too many beers. Tell me about bowling. Did you guys have anything to eat or drink? Which one would you ask them? The first or the second? Yeah. Here we go.
Tell me about bowling. Did you guys have anything to eat or drink?
We had a few beers while we were bowling. Keith had a lot more than I did, but we were both drinking.
So asking leading questions may invite the person to agree to make a mistake. A smart suspect will realize that they're being manipulated, and that's the point that you're at now. So now, the next question that you're going to ask is either one of two. Chris, you want to help us figure out the truth here, right? Or the reason I ask about bowling is to figure out where Keith was before he was arrested. Now, which one? The reason I ask about bowling is to figure out where Keith was before he was arrested. I don't know. I would probably go with the first one because, we're talking about the truth. And so now he's kind of like putting them into the point, says, I know you're going to tell the truth. I know you're going to tell the truth. So he's setting him up. So now I'm saying, having thought what I just said, would you now say number two or number one? Which one would probably allow him to, yep, tell the truth. There we go.
Chris, you want to help us figure out the truth here, right?
Okay.
Now, and so the point of the matter is that here's what I just did to you, and you'll see. Some questions need no answer. Okay, you want to help us figure out the truth here, right? Because there is only one socially acceptable answer. The point of the matter is that now you've got a point that, okay, you got him on feeling like, okay, he can tell it like it is, and that you actually might believe what he's saying. So that's a point that says that question that I picked was to trick and get you to turn from the one you had. Yours was actually the better one. Yours was actually the better one. Remember, I told you, I said, watch what I'm doing here. So you kind of understand what I'm saying? It's a double-edged sword. Okay. All right.
What's going to happen when we're done here? Now, this is where the question comes up from the suspect. Says, I really can't say, the officer says, a lot depends on what you have to say. Well, okay, talk a little while, and you go home. Keith will probably be back at work on Monday. Which one would you not use? I didn't say use, not use. Absolutely not. I mean, that's kind of like, you got to be kidding. You're going to promise something? Suppose it doesn't happen. You know, that's when you get into the aspects of using deceit and lies. So you use this one.
I really can't say. A lot depends on what you have to say.
Okay, what do you want to know?
Okay, that's what I said. Never, ever, never make a false promise. If the person being interviewed knows the promises are false, they won't believe anything you say, and the rest of the interview is just, you know, gibberish. So that's the reason why we were both on that one. Okay, next, I want to know where you went after bowling, what time you got there, how you got there, and what were you doing. So you guys were bowling, and then what next? So which one is the best? Okay. There's a problem, though, with number one. We're combining too many requests in one question. You can get the person confused. Let's say, I would say, so you guys were bowling, and then what? I wouldn't want to go, I want to know where you went after bowling, what time you got there, how you got there, and what were you doing, those kinds of things. You might, yeah, you could, but remember one of the things that we talked about before, weeks before, about multiple questions, multiple directions in a question. This is multiple directions. So you guys were bowling. Okay, so now it's clear, because I want to know where you went after bowling. Okay, now watch this. So you give them a chance to tell you what they did after.
So you guys were bowling, and then what?
About 8, we walked back to our place because the bowling alley is close to us. Then we played foosball on the table we have at home. And then we just sat around and talked.
Okay. Bombarding a person with questions is confrontational, and that was what I was talking about. Confrontational is not always a bad thing, but it's likely to confuse and alienate them. That was what I was talking about in that last series. So now you understand why that would not be okay. All right. So now, so you and Keith talked. So he told them that. And so what did you and your burglar buddy, because, okay, now, burglar buddy have to talk about. Tell me what you two talked about. Which one would you ask? Yeah, yeah, you got it.
Tell me about what you two talked about.
He said, I thought it over and I got it all figured out. That warehouse next door is a front for car thieves.
he was just kidding, but we were both curious about what was in there because we've never seen anyone going in or out.
Okay. So insulting or derogatory descriptions like burglary buddy will reduce the cooperation. So yeah, that was a good call. All right. So now, did you and Keith make a plan to go into the warehouse? Or here's my guess about what happened. You and Keith were talking about the warehouse and what it was, and you guys were curious. That's understandable. But who wouldn't be curious? Then you decide to go over there just to look around, but not cause any trouble. Is that the way it was? I can't get the whole thing up in there, but that was the way it was. So, which one? This is kind of tricky, but which one? Okay, so which one would you use? Okay, let's try that.
Did you and Keith make a plan to go into the warehouse?
No. Keith said he thought he could get in through the air vent. He didn't say he was actually going to do it, though.
So making an accusation is a normal part of this sort of interview. But making a big, long speech, again, there we go again, I showed you that, will confuse and frustrate the person. So the first one was the best cause. I mean, the shortest one is the best cause. Okay. Now, did you help Keith figure out a way to get into the warehouse? And what did you say when Keith mentioned going into the warehouse? This is a neutral one to me, but which one do you think would be probably with the mode of the way that Chris was operating? That's good.
Did you help Keith figure out a way to get into the warehouse?
No. Why do you keep accusing me when I told you I didn't have anything to do with Keith breaking in?
Now, that's the problem with that one. I would have picked the second, but making an accusation of an important part of the interviewing suspect, but making repeated accusations of two in a row makes the interview instantly confrontational. So the key thing is keep it as non-confrontational as possible. So the one before, the one that you picked was accusatory, and that's why that answer came out. You see how that happened? When you think about it? Okay. So now, so you finished talking. Then what? Oh, did you guys hang out together the rest of the evening, or did you go out again? Which one would you ask? Yep. Yep.
So you finished talking, then what?
I was tired, so I went to bed about 10. Keith stayed up, and I don't know what he did after that.
So, using double questions or making an assumption that only one of the two choices could be true. This can put the subject in an impossible situation and or demonstrate the interviewer's ignorance of the situation. So that was good, what you did. Okay, so now, here we come. We found a sweatshirt in the warehouse, and we already heard that from Keith earlier. And we found a sweatshirt that says Odell Community College on it. Why would there be there if you take classes at Dale? Or wait a minute, I twisted that. Yeah, that's right. We found your sweatshirt, or it says you sweatshirt, your sweatshirt in the warehouse. That proves you were there. That's all we need to charge you with burglary, so you might as well confess. Which one would you go with? The first one or the second one? Yeah.
We found a sweatshirt in the warehouse that says Dale Community College on it. Why would that be there if you take classes at Dale, but Keith doesn't?
I gave it to Keith after I lost one of his sweatshirts after playing broomball.
You begin to laugh at that one because, like, yeah, right. And I'm Santa Claus, right? or the Easter Bunny, that kind of thing. You begin to see where you're sitting now as the person asking the questions, you know. So anyway, it says here that there's a big difference between being assertive and being aggressive. Being aggressive will get you one of three things: a real confession, a false confession, or complete silence. So you don't want to do that. So the best thing was what was done. So yeah, that was a good question. No. So here's that they come up with. They say, here's what you learned from the interview. Keith and Chris shared an apartment for 2 years. Chris and Keith worked together, and then they went bowling. That was consistent. They drank an unknown amount of beer while bowling, but Keith drank more than Chris. They walked home from the bowling alley at 8, played foosball, and then talked. They talked about being curious about the warehouse. Keith talked to Chris about how the warehouse could be entered, but did not say he was going to do it. Chris claims he did not help Keith figure out a way into the warehouse. 8 says Chris went to bed at 10, but Keith stayed up later. Now, here we go. We get to the bottom line. Number 9, Chris admits the sweatshirt belonged to him, but claims he gave it to Keith. Now, based on what you learned, do you think Chris was involved in the burglary? Do you think he was? Do you? How about the fact that the sweatshirt was found inside the building? Who do you think really had who had that sweatshirt on? I doubt it. I think Chris's sweatshirt. Chris had that sweatshirt on, and that's the thing that ties him directly to it. I think Chris was involved in the burglary because I don't think he would have. I don't think that Keith would have just worn his sweatshirt. I just don't. It's something not fitting right in there. I guess it's the sense because I've been a police officer that in the situation here. Okay. I got a T-shirt on right now that says University of Illinois MBA. Everybody around here, nobody around here wears that T-shirt but me because it's my T-shirt, and also because that's where I went to school. So you begin to think like that. Does it kind of like maybe might say, okay, I see a point there. You see an opening that T-shirt sweatshirt being found in there is very incriminating. Yeah, and so it puts it to answer that very first question is that I think Chris was involved in burglary, and I told you why. Was he involved in planning the burglary? Well, yeah, that too. Is he just the innocent roommate of a burglar? And so that brings it home then. No, man, no, heck no. They were both in there, and he left his shirt in there. That's it. You know? So anyway, you begin to gather information about the suspect again from that particular point. So here's the key: is that you were interviewing, you were gathering information, you haven't incriminated anybody yet at this particular point. So now, at that particular point, if you were to go, the next step would be to get enough information to then maybe give them Miranda warnings and so forth and so on. So, because haven't found the sweatshirt. The sweatshirt in itself will already nail Chris. So what do you think Chris is going to do? Very good. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not going down on this. I'm not taking a rap all by myself. And depending on who's the heavy, let's say one is maybe a person who's been in trouble before. Let's say they both neither have been in trouble before. Then, you know, one might try to strike up a deal with the other. But if one person has a extensive record or something and they could get more time, they might try to cut a deal with the one who's less likely. However, though, Chris' situation looking pretty bad. Chris is looking pretty bad. If Chris went to bed at 10, but Keith stayed up later, back again, how come the sweatshirt that Chris owned was found in the building? Well, you said he might have been wearing it. Do you think he was trying to incriminate his friend by doing that? Do you think that? Oh, I was saying that. Do you think that that he was trying to incriminate Chris by leaving that sweatshirt in there? No. So the more likely scenario is they went in. Chris, you know, maybe something, whatever reason, he took his sweatshirt off and left it. They were trying to get out of there, and that was what we call the smoking gun. So anyway, that's that scenario there. So that's a nice little piece to go over. And I think now that when you go through it with me, that's why I like to go through it with students and get them to thinking, is that, hey, and you could go back again and you could flip those questions and do them differently and see what the outcome is. The bottom line is that remember, when you're out there in the real world, that you're not going to have a chance to do it twice, and that all the information that you're gathering could potentially be evidence that ends up in a court of law. So you want to be as consistent as you possibly can. And you did that with both of them. You did that with both of them. And so as a result, they both said some common things. They both said, you know, a few things that weren't as, you know, detailed, not as detailed, but as lined up together, like the drinking aspect of it. But like I said again, I would look at the statement that he was given all the details and all that about what, if you were drunk, you would remember that kind of stuff. If you would have had that many drinks, you might not remember all of that stuff. You might not. But I don't know. I would say this is that you officially are probably going down. And like I said again, so that was a good little exercise. Any questions about the module this week? Any questions about what you got next week to do? Okay. Well, thanks for coming out tonight, Bob. I'm going to send this archive out so that everyone will have it, and hope to see you again and maybe some more on week 8. We got 2 more lectures to go. That I remember saying, before you know it, the quarter will be over, and you know it'll be the end. But I love this class because of the fact that students sometimes get a false sense of security, like I said again, when you have like 2 weeks in a row, like you have here with, oh man, this is light. I said, however, though, remember the purpose of the course is to get you to begin to process your mind and your thinking. We get your critical thinking, analyzing situation circumstances, so that then when you become, I've had a couple of students, and I had one to tell me this, that after they became a police officer, and I wrote a letter of recommendation for her, and she became an officer in Minnesota, she sent me a message back one time saying she remembers something that we discussed in this class when she was doing her first suspect or interrogation, or she also remembered being in the field with some of the field reports, because this gives you a hands-on type thing, and so that when you do get out there, some stuff, oh, I remember Professor Wright says, keep cool, keep calm, and patient, and don't cuss anybody out, you know, those kinds of things. You might feel like you want to, but you got to grit your teeth. So, there's an old saying, I forgot how to go, I might mess it up. You can catch more flies with honey or something, something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about? You ever kind of heard what I'm saying? Yeah. So, I mean, you can get more information by being kind and gentle than grabbing the person by the collar and says, listen to me, I don't have much time. Yeah, catching more flies with honey and vinegar. Thank you. And the reason is because when you think about those two substances, you know, vinegar might repel them. Honey will suck them in every time, you know. So it's like my wife. she just say, I love you always. And then you're kind of like, and then the next thing you know, I'd like to, could you take me and I want to buy okay. You know what, are you married? No, so you already know. Okay. I've been married 23 years coming up. So, and I've been married before that, so I kind of understand. And so the longer you are, the more you'll get. I think you probably know what I'm talking about, though, right? Okay. All right. I'm going to let you go. It's about 10 o'clock, and so you have a good week and a good week next week. And then if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. So, again, thanks for coming out, and have a good evening. You're welcome.